entire fender of a Toyota Tacoma. Never thought I'd be doing this, but here we are. Hey guys, it's Chloe. Welcome back, or welcome to my channel. As you just saw in today's video, I'm going to be removing and then replacing a rear fender on a salvaged 2020 at TRD Pro Tacoma. Now, if you guys are new to my channel, welcome. This is part 4 of a rebuild series I'm doing with my friend who bought a 2020 salvaged Tacoma, and we're trying to bring it back to life and document the whole thing here on my YouTube channel. So if you want to see the damage, the backstory, want to know how much my friend paid for the Tacoma, you can check out episodes 1, 2, and 3, which I'll link down below. But today I'm solely working on that damaged rear fender. Now I'm guessing if you're watching this, unless you have a Tacoma and you want to convert it to a wide body, or for some reason if you're in a situation like we are and you need to replace a fender, you're probably watching this video out of genuine curiosity. And let me tell you, this was not an easy task. It took me the span of a couple of days to complete, but it was actually really cool because I have a Tacoma myself and I got to learn how the bed of a Tacoma is constructed over the frame and how Toyota designed all the pieces to fit together to hold the bed and body panels in place. One of the big reasons we decided to do this instead of outsource the work was to essentially help out with labor costs before this truck goes off to paint. If you've ever had body panel damage on your Tacoma or any car for that matter, and you wonder why labor costs at a body shop is so expensive, well, you're about to find out. Let's go take a look at the fender of a damaged Tacoma. So we're gonna start with the bed rail. It's just 4 bolts. I'm going to attempt to bend this bed rail back into place by putting it under that toolbox and just basically pulling on it. So here's what the bed rail looks like after bending it back and forth a little bit. So you can see there's a little deformation right here, but definitely better than before and pretty straight now. So the next thing we're gonna do is take off the mud flaps. But before we do that, I wanted to show you guys something that I noticed. So there's like a little piece of like some sort of wood wedged in between the tire and the wheel. And seeing that damage is kind of in line with the damage up here, we're thinking now maybe that this is part of like a telephone pole, and maybe that's how the bedside was damaged, not by another car. So I don't know, just trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together. We haven't found the owner quite yet. Thought you guys would find that interesting. So now let's do the mud flaps. There's just 5 10mm bolts that you need to take off, but for this last one, if you're on the passenger side, since the exhaust is in the way, you're gonna need to use a shorter socket, so just keep that in mind. And that is mud flap off. As you can see, it is very disgusting in there. Who knows what's been looming in here for basically almost a year. The next thing we're gonna do is take off this little plastic piece right here, which is just this bolt. It's also 10mm. And it also looks like there's some adhesive here, since that was the only bolt, but obviously it's staying in place. And as you can see, as I'm pulling away, that adhesive is kind of also stripping away. Now, normally I do this with a knife, but this adhesive seems really soft and it's not coming off with too much difficulty. So I'm just gonna pull away at it and loosen it and then take it off. Plus, since this fender is already damaged, it's like not too big of a deal if it gets damaged even more. Now we're gonna take off the damaged fender flare, which I know for a fact has adhesive behind it, so we may need to use a knife for it. Again, like a lot of parts on the Tacoma and Toyota in general, we're gonna be using a 10mm socket. Now we're gonna remove some of these annoying plastic clips. And I say they're annoying because they really are annoying to get out. You'll know if you've ever tried these, to take out the wheel well liner. So we're just going to wedge this as best we can, wiggle it out. Now we're just gonna pull this wheel well liner out. It's gonna be pretty gross. There is one more 10mm bolt back here. Actually, it's a clip, but I'm gonna try to push on it from behind this fender. All right, now the wheel well liner is out. Definitely the hardest part is that last clip inside the wheel well, but not too difficult to remove. Now with the wheel well liner out, we can get a clearer picture of how this body panel actually connects to the bed. So there's just a couple screws that we're gonna access from right here. Then we're actually gonna have to shift part of the bed back to access some more screws back there. All right, now as promised, we're going to remove the bed, so. Look at that. So what I basically just did was try to shift the entire bed back as far as I can, but you have to actually remove these bumper caps to like pull out the entire bed. But I did the best that I could to kind of wiggle it as far back as I can. I don't actually know if I moved it back that much, but I need to access some screws behind here. So that's why I wanted to have as big of a gap as possible. To give you guys an idea of what I'm working with, there's basically a couple of bolts like literally in between here that we're gonna need to remove. So a little bit of a tight space, but I think we can get it done. It's really hard to get a good like grip on the bolt. So now that this bolt is like kind of out, the problem is it's been moved so far out that like now the socket wrench is stuck. Okay guys, so it's a new day, and the last time I was here, I was trying to move the entire bed of this truck back to access a couple of bolts behind the fender. Now I wasn't able to move the bed back that much because the bumper was in the way, and so I didn't have much room to access those bolts, and I was actually unable to remove any of them. And it was getting late, so I stopped working. And basically what's happened since then is my friend who owns this truck has actually removed the entire rear bumper, as you can see. And also he's been aware of like everything I've done. He's been the one giving me suggestions on what to do to work on his truck because it's not my truck. So he did think the right thing to do was to move the bed back, so that's why he took off the bumper for me. Now I'm gonna actually remove the bed and try to access those couple of bolts so we can actually finally remove this fender. So all I did was basically shift the bed a little bit back so that we could access these bolts over here. Before it was about here, so we had not a lot of room to work. Now there is a little bit more room to work. Just to show you on the other side, you can see that this sits a lot closer. So the bed itself is shifted. Now let's try to remove those bolts to get that fender off. Now that we have all the bolts out from over here, I'm going to shift the bed back in place. The next thing I did was bolt these two bolts back into the bed so that the bed is more secure and we know it's actually aligned. And now the next step is to put this bumper back on. I actually didn't take it apart, like I said, my friend did, so I'm gonna have to figure out how to do that. But I think while I'm at it, we're also gonna like clean it because it's pretty dirty. Basically, the reason we want to put this back is because I need to open the tailgate to get to all of these bolts, because as you can see, all of these bolts and everything over here is completely part of the fender, so we're gonna have to do that now. So this bumper piece mounts on with 8 bolts. I just put all the bolts in place and now I'm gonna tighten them. So basically it was just these 2 bolts up here, same 2 bolts on the other side, these 2 bolts underneath the bumper cap, and then same thing on the other side. All right, so now we're going to remove the tailgate. This is actually pretty easy to do. The first thing is you want to remove this hinge over here. So to do that, you just lift up the tailgate a little bit. You basically just slide it off. We're gonna do the same thing on the other side. Lift up and remove. Next, once you have both of the hinges off, you're just going to pull the tailgate off, just like this. Once you have it off of that, you're gonna just pull the wiring harness out, and we unplug this first. And then you just take out the last piece just like this. And as you can see, it's not too difficult to steal these tailgates. Now we're just going to, as we've been doing before, just removing some bolts to take the fender off. Now I'm using a T40 to take off these 2 bolts. And then now we're underneath the passenger side. This is the bumper cap, and you can see that the fender also connects to the bumper right here, so we're gonna have to remove this one. So the bumper cap's off so that we can access these 2 bolts, but before we get to that, we have to take off this plastic piece, and there's some little push pins which I'm gonna use a flathead to take out. So there's just a couple of these little guys that we're gonna have to take out. Next, we're gonna take out these 2 bolts, which basically holds this piece in, and this piece just prevents the tailgate from falling down all the way. That's what this piece looks like. Now I think we're at the point where all the necessary bolts that are holding the fender on are off, so I'm going to attempt to remove this fender. Now I'm not too worried about removing it because if I drop it, it's already damaged, but I'm gonna do my best to handle it with care. And this is an entire fender of a Toyota Tacoma. Never thought I'd be doing this, but here we are. So in case you're curious what underneath the fender looked like, or at least the other side of the bed looked like, this is what it looks like. It's really interesting to see some of the things back here. This right here is the plug for the outlet you have in your bed. This is obviously the little storage cubby you have back in the bed. It's easier to get a top view of the shock, so since this is a TRD Pro, it has the TRD Pro Fox shocks with the reservoirs. I think they're 2.5s. But yeah, just in case you wanted to see what the underside of a fender looks like, here it is. So taking off this rear fender was a multiple day and night process, as you can see for me. There's just a lot of bolts, but once you know how to do it, it's not that hard. I'm really lucky my friend gave me good guidance on how to do it, mostly because it's his truck, so I wanted to make sure I was doing it right, or at least the way he wanted me to do it. But yeah, I never thought I would take off a rear fender off of a Tacoma, but here I am. So pretty cool to see what's underneath too. But now temporarily we're gonna put the new fender back on. It's not painted, so technically we don't need to put it back on. That's the job for the body shop to do, whoever's gonna end up painting the fender. But we're just gonna put a couple bolts in just to hold it into place. So before I put the new fender on this truck, just wanna show you guys, I'm gonna be putting a bolt here, maybe a bolt down there, and a bunch of the other 10mm that were on over here. And this is strictly for transport. Obviously, we're not driving this truck because it's not even registered. But yeah, that's just to hold it in place and at the same time make it easy for the auto body shop to take off the new fender. Alright, instead of putting some of the bolts back here, just because they were impossible to reach basically without moving the bed back, even with my hands which are pretty small, I decided to secure the fender by putting these two bolts back into place. Like I said, this Tacoma is just going to be transported and not actually going to be driven, so this should be enough to secure it. But yeah, let's secure this in place right now. Now here are some before and after shots of the truck. Right now the truck is actually in the body shop getting all painted up as we speak. In the next episodes we're going to finish fixing the salvage part of the truck, which are the airbags and seat covers, and then after that we're going to start modding the truck. So it should be really fun. Hope you stick around. Thanks for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye guys.